I'm coming at this from a very negative stance, it might sound like. From the sense of indie author folly, right? As it pertains to business. You're making the conscious decision as an artist, as an author, to make your debut novel be one of a series of linked books. Okay? I'm saying you might not be doing yourself justice as an artist. You might run into things like burnout. You might end up shelving the series, which would not be a good idea. Let's check out some remedies, because I don't want to just be feel like I'm pissing on people's parade or anything like that. Here are some remedies that I'll just say. So let's say, for instance, it's already in print. Okay. Let's just say you've already put book 1 out, and now you're for whatever reason, you are just, it's not doing well. You want to move on. You want to do other things. One way that you could remedy that is to take it out of print. If it hasn't gotten a lot of sales or anything like that, if it hasn't really generated any kind of buzz online, you haven't already had a bunch of people come out of the woodwork and say something about it on your behalf, you could take it out of print and just kind of, we'll just pretend none of that ever happened. That's always an option. That's an option. And then you could move on to something else and just learn from that situation and just say, yeah, my next time, I'm going to do things differently. Plan accordingly. So another remedy is say, forget the readers. Because this is in the same vein now, because this is a question that's been asked numerous times that I've seen floating around BookTube, AuthorTube, mostly AuthorTube on YouTube, is what happens when the author DNFs their own series. Forget the readers DNFing a series. What happens when the author DNFs their own series and they've already generated some interest in that series from the readers? Well, that's a pickle. To find yourself in. You've got readers that are like, what the hell, man? What's going on here? What are you doing? We're waiting on you. What's going on? Where's your work ethic? You not knowing that, going into it, you thought, well, I'm just going to go and start a series. But now you're on book 2, book 3, book 4, and you're like, well, I don't really have any interest in finishing this series now. What are you going to do? How's that going to reflect on you? These are thoughts now going on in your head. So I've heard indie authors ask, this is not a question that I ascribe to. I've heard indie authors ask the question, do authors owe readers books? Okay. Well, first off, imagine having that problem. Am I right? I think that's a problem most authors would welcome with open arms. Picture a bunch of self-entitled, as some authors kind of insinuated with the way that they answer this question. Picture a bunch of self-entitled readers who are just chomping at the bit, to get their hands on your next release. But you decided to have the brilliant idea to jumpstart your career as an author, as a published author, with a multi-book series. Okay. And now here's the predicament you find yourself in. And you're no longer interested in finishing the series. The story, your heart isn't in it. Okay. Don't worry about it. I got you covered. Here's some remedies. Here's some things that you could do. Okay. It's not necessarily, it might still lose you readers. It might still lose you customers, but you might be able to salvage at least your reputation, in most instances. I would say one would definitely be some transparency. So publicly, don't waste any fucking time don't waste any time at all. If you have a series that has made sales, but for whatever fucking reason, your heart is not in it anymore and you just can't bring yourself to write those final books of the series, then you need to get online and you need to publicly announce the cancellation of that series and document that so that readers and customers can use that as a reference and just say, yeah, the series was canceled at such and such date. You know, it was such and such date that there was an official, because you'll see with a lot of like streaming services and distributors will do the same thing. So like, for instance, you've heard of Netflix series, you know, they get signed on for multiple seasons, but then shows end up getting canceled after season 1 because it turned out to be a flop or something like that. You know, you got to make that, it's just a professional kind of way of doing things. So it does show an air of professionalism if you're willing to do something like that publicly. So that's, I think, if someone did that, I would be like, well, you know, it definitely says something in terms of their character, that they're willing to kind of face their, you know, maybe their fan base, if you will, what, depending on what little it is, doesn't really matter, but just the fact that they were willing to put their face out there and say, just like I tell people to stand behind your product, right? If you put something out on the market, stand behind your product. Well, I don't really, you know, whatever. Your opinions of your work may change over time, but you put that out there, you have your name on that. So in essence, you do have to take some sense of responsibility for what it is that you decided of your own free will to put out onto the market. That's one way of doing that. So publicly announcing the cancellation. Guys, I'm not feeling it anymore. I can't finish this series. Now, you guys, what I'm saying to you in the future is that I'm not going to jump right into writing another series. You know, I might try writing some standalones. I might try writing for some other publications or magazines or stuff like that. You know, there's all kinds of different ways that you can continue to be a published author and earn respect at the same time and garner a positive reputation and be able to walk away from something that your heart and you just don't have a passion for anymore. But you still have a passion for writing. It's just not for that particular project. You know, sure, it might show a little short-sightedness, you know, from the get-go, but shit, you know, we're all human. People make mistakes as far as that goes, you know, and the people who are rational and reasonable, I think, will be able to kind of see that in somebody who's willing to make that kind of decision. Now, another way to kind of remedy that is you can never say never, and you can choose, you know, I'm not going to quit this project. I see that there's people who are interested in seeing how this story, resolves, comes to a conclusion, they want closure, what have you. And my reputation as an author is on the line here. I don't want to gain a reputation of somebody who writes checks their ass can't cash, right? So another is just figure out a way to finish the series. Now, one way that you could do this, not on your own, is you could co-write the rest of the series. You could maybe find another author out there who's willing to take on the project with you, tackle the project with you, and co-write the project. I'm not saying ghost write, because yes, you could hire a ghostwriter to kind of finish your series for you, but from my experience, usually within writer circles, like when fans find out that an author uses a ghostwriter, you know, for their works, you know, it does not usually reflect well upon that author's artistic merit, let's just say. And it tends to kind of put a damper on their reputation. I mean, if there's obviously, if you're saying you're an author, but you're not the one actually writing the work, well, you know, are you really an author, or are you just a publisher at that point?